our water is drained into Syracuse Lake, and I know we have a lot of Syracuse people on the boat today, and they get the benefit of a lot of wetlands. All that water flows down through the 10 Lake series into Wawasee and out through this channel, and goes into Syracuse Lake. It goes into Turkey Creek again on the other side of Syracuse Lake.
We're going to go a little further back in time rather than just 25 years. We're going to go all the way back to 1875. 1875 is when the first research study took place here on Lake Wawasee. That's only 10 years after President Lincoln was assassinated, the end of the Civil War. That's amazing. 140 years ago, this lake already being studied by scientists. Pretty impressive. Wild rice covered half of the surface area of Lake Wawasee. Amazing. The wild rice was so thick that you couldn't put a John boat through it. You could only get through it with overfishing. Was already cited back then 140 years ago as being a problem for Lake Wawasee. I wouldn't say it's a problem now, but back then folks would come in on the railroad from big cities and they would use traps and nets and all sorts of things that were illegal according to the DNR, and they'd grab those fish and they'd head back to those different... Going back 120 years of good temperature data. But over the last 120 years, the top warm water layer is getting thinner on Lake Wawasee. Oxygen, we've got data going back about 100 years. Back in 1912, oxygen went down from the surface all the way down to 55 feet. Now the total lake depth is around 80 feet. So the majority of the lake had oxygen going down. Whereas now, oxygen only goes down about 30 feet. So oxygen used to go down 50 feet, now it only goes down 30 feet. Well, you say, well, who cares, Nate? Why do we care about oxygen? Well, I'll tell you who does care. It's the fish that live in the lake. All right, because the lake doesn't start getting really cold until you get down to around 35 feet of depth. So those cold water fish that we used to have in this lake, like sturgeon, cisco, they're no longer able to survive in this lake because that cold water that they need no longer has oxygen in it like it once. I mentioned this a few weeks back, but with all the research that the center is doing, several of those studies in partnership with WACF, Wawasee and Syracuse lakes are the most studied lakes in all of Indiana, which is a pretty cool designation that we have. And we need to continue to look at those, to strategically work on some of these things that WACF's been talking about and some of the great work that they've done. So our engines are off. We're good? No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this down. This little messenger here is going to hit that button and it's going to close either side. All right? Oh, good. Surface on. $54 is a guess for the bottom. Oh, okay. Well, actually, Jay's exactly right that it warmed up a little bit. Actually, down at the bottom, it stays right around 45, 50 degrees all year long. It's